Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dear presidents, dear colleagues, dear friends, I'm given this honor, and it's my pleasure, great pleasure, to conduct this session. This is going to be a very interesting session. We've got a very bright and powerful group of speakers. I would like to start with Mr. President Mnangagwais, who is a legendary person who fought most of his life with weapons in his hand for independence of his motherland. He spent 10 years in one prison, and then 2 years in another prison, and he had two death sentences on him. And then when he became the president, he abolished the capital punishment. It would be very interesting, of course, to hear about his experience. If he can share his experience. His country is under sanctions has been under sanctions for many years because they nationalized the property of the white colonizers. Mr. Catacora, he has got a slightly less dramatic life. However, his life is also filled with victories. Also, he was, for about 15 years, he has been the Minister of Economy of his country, and under him, the country has increased its GDP several-fold, and he has conducted very interesting reforms, including nationalization of property of foreign companies, and he was overseeing the import replacement, and he managed to do that very well. I think he will be it'll be very interesting to hear his experience. And of course, Vladimir Putin needs no introduction. He is the president, and I don't think I have to say much, but in the 90s, when our country was in a very tragic situation, I remember there was almost no hope in those years, and God himself had mercy on us, and today, President Putin, you've got tasks that are no less challenging, but for the moment I think we'll talk about something else. Vladimir Vladimirovich, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends, my colleagues, President Mnangagwais, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 27th St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. This year we've got over 12,000 participants and over 100 countries participating in this event. These are shareholders and managers of leading companies, experts and analysts, statesmen. Our forum allows not just to establish new economic contacts and start interesting projects, but also exchange opinions on global trends, on global markets and local markets. Also talk about through the lens of economic relationships, look at the events that are unfolding in the world. And we see that there's a race to establish sovereignty around the world, and on several levels, on economic level, on a cultural level, and on the level of values. And those who used to be leaders of the global development are trying to hold on to their role still, and there's nothing unusual about this. When a person is trying to keep its positions or his positions, that's a usual thing. And we see that economy number one in the world is China. Third is India, a global leader in terms of dynamic growth. We see that louder and louder we hear the voices of countries of Asia and Africa, where they've got a high level of birth rate and low level of urbanization. According to experts, according to specialists in the field, these countries will determine the future trends of development. I'd like to add that today we've got an explosion in the field of technology, almost in every area of life. All processes, management processes, and even industries are affected by this. And of course, it will be those countries that are making these new solutions, creating these new solutions, but not only making those solutions, but it will be able to implement those. We see that the financial sector has changed significantly. Electronic trade, transportation, state government, similar processes are developing in the field of military, where we need a high pace of technological development. These are the key determining questions for our country. In the current situation and in the long-term perspective, the future of countries depends on how well they'll be able to respond to these global challenges, whether they'll be able to use their internal potential, whether they'll be able to minimize their weaknesses and establish new partnerships with other countries. Since February this year, in my address to this state address, I've established certain priorities, and we have outlined a program for development until the end of the year and beyond. We are focusing on the economic development of the country, on the fundamental changes that are happening in the country, and we are aiming to support these trends. We see that we need resources, administrative resources, human resources on all levels, on regional and on state levels. We talked about the national programs. So what are the changes? Number one, taking into account the international nature of our event. I'll start with economic relationships, with the positions that we're aiming to establish on the international market. Despite all the obstacles and illegitimate sanctions, Russia remains one of the key participants in world trade. It's actively developing logistics, expanding its geography, and we're expanding our relationships with Asian countries. We see that there's a 60% growth from 2020 to 2023. Latin America, 62% growth. And I assume that the presidents of Bolivia and Zimbabwe will also touch upon these subjects. Overall, they're friendly countries to Russia, and we should focus on that first of all. We should focus on the fast-growing economies of the world. they will be determining the future of the global economy. We see that 3/4 of our trade volume is with those countries. We are continuing to work with Eurozone countries, and we see that last year the total GDP of this union grew by 3.8%. We see that the structure of this trade has improved, and we see that there is more supply of highly technological goods, and we are going to support this highly technological export from Russia. By 2030, we are aiming to increase the volume of such exports by 2/3 compared to 2023. And we're talking not just about exports in terms of tons or meters or units of goods. We're talking about goods of highly technological goods. We're talking about expansion of cooperation. All of this is important. However, this is not sufficient today. We are prepared to offer other countries full format technological partnerships and industrial partnerships. We are prepared to ensure the full cycle of production of these goods, engineering support, insurance, and so on. Such approach to cooperation on the equal basis, on the basis of competences, not on the basis of monopolization, this ensures stability of our companies on the world market. This allows us to work with foreign partners on a long-term basis. And it's exactly how one of our leaders works in the market, Rosatom. This is how they work on a long-term basis. They are a leader in nuclear plant construction. It's necessary to establish and strengthen transportation links. So in the Asia Pacific and China, some of the major projects for us include the eastern railways. So we are moving to the third stage of modernization of these railways, and we are going to increase the capacity of the eastern railways to 210 million ton. We will also put particular attention to the southern corridor, Russia South corridor. The Northern Sea route is also very important. 36 million ton was transported through that route. We are going to increase that number, and we're going to continue to improve the infrastructure of these ports. We are going to focus specifically on the northern subjects of our Russian Federation. And we're going to form a special committee in the government which will be devoted to the projects of developing the Northern Sea routes. By 2030, the volume of transportation in the northern corridors should grow by 1.5 times. First of all, due to higher competitiveness of these routes. And what's important for importers and exporters is the development of the trans-border payment infrastructures. We see that the trust to the Western payment systems has been undermined, and was undermined by themselves, effectively. And we see that the payment for Russian exports, payments for the Russian exports using non-friendly currencies is reduced twofold. And we see that we're approaching 40% of payments in rubles now. We see that so we see that the payment in rubles for our goods has increased to almost 40%, 39%. And we will continue working on using national currencies for international payments. And we will continue working on making those transactions more secure. And we will be also creating payment systems which will be resistant to sanction pressure and political pressure in the BRICS area. I'd like to remind you that in BRICS in the current year, we have new participants, Saudi Arabia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Ethiopia. So our share in the global GDP has grown to 36%. And in terms of population, up to 46%. So BRICS has got a great potential for joining in new participants. And there's desire of new partners to continue this partnership, to join BRICS, will be supported. We will continue not only in the area of finance, but also in terms of security and other areas. We will be acting, taking into account global trends. And we will also be taking into account the growing potential of national economies. So the second structural change is the new quality of economic growth in Russia, due to growth to an active policy to change the economy to the supply side economy. And we see that the first quarter of this year, 5.4% is the growth of supply. So we see that the growth of our economy is higher than the global growth. And we see this dynamic is determined not by commodities, which is very important. In 2023, I'd like to also note that GDP at 45.5% of GDP was ensured by basic industries: logistics, construction, processing, agriculture, power supply, and others, utilities. And 65 were trade, hotels, retail, and so on. Effectively, we have set ourselves a goal to become one of the 4 leading economies in the world. And according to the World Bank estimates, this was last week, the World Bank has done new calculations, and they put Russia at the 4th place. We are ahead of Japan. Russia has got the 4th place in terms of GDP and in terms of going ahead of Japan in terms of purchasing capacity. But the matter is not with GDP, is not to do with these figures, is not to, the point is not about being on the 4th place. There's not a big difference between Japan and Germany and Russia, but we're ahead. However, we understand that the leadership positions should be strengthened all the time. Other countries are not standing still, and it's important to ensure stable pace of growth for long term. This is our objective. But that's not, so it's not just about those economies that are next to us, Germany and Japan. Other countries like Indonesia, for example, are also catching up. Their population is growing, their economy is developing, so we should not be forgetting that. So we need to strengthen financial, technological, and personnel sovereignty. We need to increase our capacities, increase competitiveness of our products, both on the international markets but also on our domestic market. The result of such development should be reduction of import to 17% by 2030. We've got good dynamics. In 2023, the import in Russia was 26% of GDP. In 2022, and in 2023, it was 19% of GDP. So it was 32 trillion rubles. So I said that the dynamics is very clear, and I would like to emphasize that the share of import should not be reduced due to administrative burdens. It should be reduced due to development of our own production capacities, our own processing capacities, agriculture, service industry, IT, and so on. Example of success of such strategy. There are many examples, but for example, in agriculture, we have created a modern meat industry. Its capacity over the last 15 years has grown twofold. Now Russia is on the 4th place in terms of production of meat, and it's increasing production, supply of meat to the world markets. And by the way, we're 100% supplied through domestic means. So we have set a new record of production in 2023, and our production is in the region of 80 kilograms per person, with the world average is about 40. And we need to start new projects and create new workplace employment for our people around the country. And the investment next year, capital investment should be around 60% capital investment. We understand what that is, what that creates for the future development, for midterm and long-term development. Over the last few years, I'd like to emphasize everything worked really well for us. I'd like to reiterate that. So the growth of investment was, the target was 4.6%, but then it turned out to be, the actual figure was over 8%. In 2023, the plan was 15.5%, and in actuality, the figure was 27%. So we almost doubled what was planned in terms of investment, capital investment. And of course, investment activity should be provided with resources. I said that we would direct additional resources in order to support industrial mortgages. We will strengthen our tool, which is called the Factory for Financing the projects. So we've got about 2 trillion rubles in that instrument, and I am proposing to gradually increase the capacity of this fund to 600 trillion rubles. And it's important to also increase the bank financing of technological companies. So we will continue to develop the taxonomy of such projects. We will increase investments in key industries and in technological projects. We will increase the number of projects which will be covered by this system, and this will allow us to attract additional investments. Government is happy to share risks with investors. So we have a fund of funds of industrial projects. We have been discussing this for a long time, and we agreed this with business community, and those who actively participated in this are aware of this. We see that that businesses are investing in Russian economy together with this fund, and this will allow us to expand public-private partnerships, and also increase investments this way into the space industry. Also, in order to support the investment activity, we need to develop the capital markets. We have to increase its capacity, its attractiveness for investors, and of course we have to pay specific attention to preservation of these funds. And today we have about 30 million retail investors, so-called, and we see that their investments increased to about 9 trillion rubles, and the demand for domestic shares has increased, and it's been ahead of the supply. So we are planning to double the capitalization of the domestic market by 2030. And I invite the government, together with the central bank, to propose measures, what can be done in order to improve the situation, to also how to improve and simplify the investment into small technological companies. And this is a call to central bank and Ministry of Finance. And this is to do with banking transaction and simplifying the structure for that. Also increasing the availability of the long-term money. I'd like to remind you that since the 1st of January of this year, we have a special program for long-term saving for citizens. So we see that you can get some tax benefit on these savings. And this program is a new program, and it's still lagging behind the target figures. And I'm proposing to work on it and improve it. So I'm proposing to lengthen the term that was initially discussed of 3 years to 10 years. And also maybe discuss with employers how employers could participate in this program. And I think this would be great for their staff, and also good for the employers. So we will have new savings certificates that will be introduced next year, which will allow people to save for 3 years and get a high return or interest on these papers. So I know that these financial institutions are trying to even bump up this interest on the deposits that people are getting, and so we'll discuss with about this later on. Since the 1st of January 2025, there will be some insurance programs, which means that the insurance money will be invested into a higher return papers. And so we've got this insurance and investment combined. And in order to guarantee the return on this investment, there will be state insurance of these papers, of these mechanisms. Now we have this mechanism of tax benefit, which allows companies to reduce their income tax by investing into these programs or into these products. This will allow us to control the quality of investment and stimulate certain areas of investment. And I would like to ask the government to create a situation where these sort of benefits could be obtained not just by a single company, but maybe by a group of companies who are involved in this. Regions will be able to liberate certain amounts of money to invest into these programs. And Ministry of Finance has been very receptive to this idea, and we'll be discussing it with them later. I'm sure that regions will support the investors directly using their own budgets. I'd like to emphasize that what I said is in relation to the tax benefits. All of that is done at the level of the subject of the Federation, Russian Federation, but also there will be a federal program which will be aimed at greater social security and also social fairness, and reduce the gap between wealth gap. Coming back to the subjects of the Federation in terms of business support, I'd like to point out this mechanism which is called regional standard, and its essence is to ensure single principles for attracting investors on the whole territory of Russia. So each region will be forming a universal investment infrastructure or ecosystem, something that's very clear. So these measures of support are available to all of us, and they're in great demand. Today, we've got a single standard which is implemented in all subjects of the Federation. Dear colleagues and friends, I'd like to thank the regional teams and government for their work. I know that there are proposals to fix the investment standard in law, and I propose the government to discuss this together with regions. I'd like to emphasize also that objective now is to promote this mechanism and to apply it actively in practice. So this is our objective for the nearest future. And for those teams that will be able to gain best results, we need to also provide for some reward at the federal level. Also, regional standard of investment will allow the Russian Federation to move ahead, significantly ahead in terms of improving investment climate. Over the last year, due to exchange of experience and due to cooperation, we've got 74 regions who have improved their investment rating or investment climate, and this is a better result than what we saw last year. Buryatia and Mordovia and Lipetsk region, Arkhangelsk and Ryazan region have shown very high results, and I congratulate my colleagues on achieving these great results. And I wish you further success. I'd like to add that we will also be working on the national rating of investment and exchange our experience with BRICS partners. In the Agency of Strategic Initiatives, we discussed this, and we said that we would be taking our own equivalent of international structures that are used in this area. The third area where we are trying to get better results is the labor market. We've got 2.6% unemployment rate, and we have also reduced the structural component of the unemployment. So that means unemployment among the young people, and it was historically high. 15-20 years ago, the main question was how to find a job, and today the main question is where to find people. So it's important to restructure the education system in order to train people who are in high demand, and also create opportunity for employees to increase their professional level throughout their career. So we will be transforming the system of professional education in Russia, and by the end of this decade we have to have a very significant part of qualified people, highly qualified people available, who will have a higher income. And the objective of the system of development of labor is to ensure the structural development. This project, a new project, which is aimed at developing the infrastructure of colleges and universities in the shipping and military and other areas. Up to 2028, we will be preparing over 1 million specialists in particular trades, particular field. As for the higher education, in the next decade, we will have 40 university campuses with very modern facilities and opportunities to study, to conduct scientific work, to live and to work. And we will be evaluating the work of universities and colleges using the matrix of salaries of their alumni. So we need very competent specialists, those who will be able to coach the younger generation. So we have to support those who are at the retirement age, in willing to share their experience in order to benefit our economy through coaching and passing their experience. The level of salary of the working retirees, we have been discussing this for a while, and we talked about this with the governor of St. Petersburg just before the meeting. I'd like to say that during my meetings with citizens, due to financial restraints and budget restraints, we had some indexation of pensions over the last few years. But today the question is very ripe, and we have to resolve it in the interest of people. And I'm proposing that starting from next year, we will come back to increasing the pensions for the working pensioners. So we see that from February 2025, we will be increasing the pensions, not just for those who are retired, but also for those who are working and retired. And I invite the government to propose a draft of law for the autumn session. The fourth structural change it is directly linked to the quality of change of our economy. We have faced a very objective lack of qualified personnel, and we see that we need to increase the investment into modernization of our companies. We see that Russia has to enter top 25 countries in terms of implementing the robots in robotics in the production cycles. That means we have to introduce about 100,000 robots in in the production facilities around the country. So we have a specialized national project aiming at reduce and optimizing the production, and we've got about 100,000 specialists involved in this project. We have to extend the existing federal projects that modernize the industrial capacities. We also have to involve at least 40% of largest companies into that program of modernization of manufacturing companies. That means it will result in greater production. It will result in greater quality of services and also greater quality of work for their employees. The fifth structural change, is the real digital platform revolution. In the current conditions, increased production is linked directly to greater digitalization. We have to introduce the digitalization into all areas of economy by 2030. So this is a new national project, data economy. We see that in the next 6 years, the major companies should move to the domestically developed software. And we have created a number of measures to support this field. This coefficient will be taken into account when calculating income tax for the companies, how much money they spent on developing their domestic software. So this program will be active up to 2030. So I'd like to invite the government to think about further measures of supporting domestic IT sector program developers. I'd like to reiterate that we have to establish a minimum level of purchasing where there's a certain volume of domestic product that needs to be involved. And this way we can reduce the project terms and also project costs. We see that due to measures that we have introduced, we were able to reduce the average costs of projects and average terms of project by about half over the last several years. So utilities and road construction have got great potential in terms of reusing smart solutions and green solutions on the basis of modern technologies. And in this relation, there is a sixth structural change, which is the forced advanced saturation of certain sectors of economy with innovation and technological solutions. So we are within the top 10 countries in terms of scientific research, and the investment into this has to be at least 2% of the GDP. So we are supporting new projects in the field of automation, in the areas of energy technologies, new materials, chemical, and other industries. We've got a number of solutions, from preparing the specialists to establishing serial production and ensuring high demand for highly technological products. And we are counting on specialized colleges and universities that prepare experts in this field. Of course, we need to continue developing the legal basis in this field so that companies feel comfortable investing into these initiatives. I would like to point out that we've got great intellectual potential in this field, and we have to capitalize on these trends. Of the first 4 months of the current year, Russia has received 8,000 applications for patents and new inventions. So we've got new developments, new technologies in the field of industry and metallurgy and other areas. We have to ensure adequate protection of these new ideas and also simplify the process of the whole life process of these inventions from patent to serial production. Small innovation companies know how to commercialize new inventions. And as somebody with legal background, I understand where there's could be a legal pitfall. So when when somebody invents something, he is the owner of that invention, and there should be some soft market mechanism to ensure that these inventions are not just collecting dust on a shelf. Seventh structural change is the transformation and the strengthening of small and medium businesses in the economy. 6 years ago, we put the objective to increase the number of people involved in small and medium-sized businesses to 25 million people. Some people were laughing at this objective. They thought this was unrealistic. Today, we can confidently say that this objective has been achieved, and achieved ahead of time, ahead of schedule. Our business people, especially younger generation, taking over the market. They are producing the products that is better than Western equivalents very often, or foreign equivalents. And our own trademarks become a very strong element in this. So we've got a lot of trademark registration applications. So we had over 143 applications for new trademarks over the last year. And the process of trademark registration is one of the quickest and most convenient and easiest in the world. So we've got 4 months lead time or consideration time. And for that period, you get a special protective document or order, and that, of course, we are respecting the culture and the history of our people, where respect and love for the local motherland is very important. So where people want to consume products that are made in Russia. So over half of the subjects of the Russian Federation are actively helping or supporting creative industries in that field. And we are creating this legal basis, legal ecosystem for the creative industries. So we will be increasing the effectiveness of the existing measures of support, and also will be providing new measures of support. I would like to point out that an important role is played by marketplaces, so-called marketplaces. They are creating this infrastructure. It's the system of supply of products where companies, even in remote areas of Russia, get the opportunity to supply their goods to the whole of the country. And I would like to point out for the government that they take into account these marketplaces and also work together with the Post of Russia to ensure the access. We know that we had a special competition, and the number of applications grew by 2.5 times last year. So this is a special project which showcases or highlights local production in different areas of Russia. And we want these practices to be applied on the regional and national level. I'd like to bring attention of the governors to such products or projects. Also, we see that the local businesses are supporting participants of the special military operation. Their relatives, they're sending their products, technology, and other goods. This understanding of their mission, patriotism, in the best sense of the word, is very, very valuable, and that and we express our respect and gratitude to these businesses. Dear colleagues, the next 8th structural change is to do with uncovering the potential of the regions of Russia, creating points of growth in villages and cities in Russia, creating opportunities for people to grow not just in capital but also in the regions, to find a well-paid job or to start a business and to apply yourself, to bring up children in comfortable conditions. We have new national projects and state programs aimed at healthcare and education, also aimed at culture and improving the environmental conditions. And of course, we need economic foundation in order to implement all these programs. And in this relation in the government, we are discussing together with heads of the largest corporations the support for these programs, and we have some positive examples. For example, Roshydro moved from Moscow to Krasnoyarsk, and of course we can concentrate resources on the growth areas, and we've got a number of master plans for Far East and Arctic regions. We have agreed that we would prepare these documents for another 200 locations in Russia, covering all regions in the country. In order to ensure long-term economic development of regions, we have to develop energy, infrastructure, roads, utilities, and the federal government is providing infrastructure loans to the regions for these purposes. And this portfolio will grow at least by 250 billion rubles per year. And overall, up to 2030, we will have 2.5 trillion rubles provided for these infrastructural projects. But the money will be spread not just depending on geography, but also depending on the competitive competitions effectively. The money that will be available, the subjects of the Russian Federation will have to send to support the infrastructural projects, utilities, in order to build roads and bridges, modernize local transportation, and also modernize local housing. I would like to ask the government, in their dialogue with their regions, to work through all details of this mechanism. Apart from removing the bottlenecks, we have to, in terms of transportation and infrastructure, we also have to work on the land and real estate that is not used or abandoned. We've got about 181,000 buildings that are empty or unused in the country. And we see that only a fifth of those has got property rights registered. I propose also so if there is a area where garbage is being dumped, if a local business is able to finance the removal of that rubbish, then there should be some measures to support such business. So we need to work through details of this, and we should remove all bureaucratic barriers. We need to think about this and how to use this unused land and this property. This way we will improve the quality of people's life and also engage more of the assets for the purposes of local economy. I'd like to also point out a few things in relation to mortgages. We've got a special program of family mortgages. So all Russian families are able to get a mortgage for 6 years at 6%. And I'd like to propose an additional solution for families who would like to purchase property in smaller towns where there's insufficient growth of residential property construction. They should be able to purchase or use these mortgages irrespective of the age of their children. Also, these benefits will act in all regions of Russia for all families who would like to build their own house. Especially this is important for bigger families with many children. And I would like to ask the government to start these projects from the 1st of July this year. I'd like to add that in order to improve the image of our local cities, we will start a special program, a special competition. This program has been very popular and it had very good feedback. For example, building of riverfront and also restoring the cultural projects, and we have to implement at least 1,000 of those this year. It's important that these projects serve to improve tourist attractiveness, and developing tourism is one of the key areas. We see that the share of local tourism should reach 5% within our GDP. And in order for this to happen, we need to continue developing smaller hotels, parks, and other destinations. The measures of our social policy should be not just effective but also fair. We have to aim at reducing the income gap for Russian families, and this also affects the internal demand and increases the capacity of the domestic market. So we're providing tax benefits and benefits payments to families. And also we need to ensure the growth of effective salaries. So we're talking about indexation of the minimum wage, and that's ensured in the constitution. Starting from next year, we will establish a certain ratio of the minimum wage, and this will be tied to the median salary. In 2025, minimum wage will be 48% of the median wage, so 28,000 rubles. So will grow by about 15%, and then the ratio will be increased so that by 2030 the minimum wage would be at least 35,000 rubles. And the last integral change is the increased quality of life for Russian families. This was said in my state address, and what's important is all areas support of motherhood and support of children, also support for elder generations, improving quality of life. As a result, we need to see the increased life expectancy and also creating equal opportunities for growing generations. Dear colleagues and friends, global economy has entered an age of cardinal changes. We have multipolar world. We have new principles and connections between countries. Russia is reacting to these changes and is also changing dynamically. To a great degree, this is the result of the work of our engineers, our experts, specialists, our business people who are actively working in the regions of Russia. And they are moving to these values or sticking to the values of support, equality, fairness. So this is what our long-term projects and programs are focused on. We want to ensure political, financial, and people's sovereignty for the country, for the economy. And on that basis, we want to cooperate with countries and other economies. And thank you very much for your patience, and I wish you every success. Thank you. Thank you very much, President Putin, for this bright speech. I think that this ensures, gives confidence to everyone who is listening in our country, and also to everyone who is fighting at the front line against another aggression of the West against our country. Now I pass the floor to Luis Arce, the President of Bolivia. Thank you, Mr. President, for a very informative speech, and it proved again that that the economics is not national science. It's not science at all. It's art. And in relation to this, I've got a question to President Putin. Maybe we can decide, and maybe you can ask us and the economists from our institutions to develop our own model of economy. We have not determined what we're doing. We have started to develop our industrial and military complex, and it works out well. However, I don't think we've got a master plan. Maybe within the framework of the economic forum or around it, maybe we could create a structure where we could use our own brains and brains of our own people, the scientists and economists. As a former economist, I know that myself. I think they are stuck in the old model. Maybe you will instruct us, or maybe the forum, to create a working group to create a new economic model. And maybe it will be assembled here during the forum or on the fringes of the forum. Maybe we could create something original for ourselves and determine where we're going. I feel that we are not going to have just a simple discussion, because what you said just is offensive to the government, and you said that we're doing something. I've spent a whole hour explaining what we're doing, and it's just like you didn't listen. I've spent a whole hour. There was a whole program of 10 points. So it's not like we're doing something. We are working on this new strategy of development, and we've got it. And we've been working on it for the whole year. And we've been creating it together with the brains that you mentioned. And constant meetings, and we did not just do anything just like that. So you're saying creating some structures. We've got some structures. Government of the Russian Federation, Central Bank, and part of the administration of the president. As for creating within the framework of the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, create a working group which would, on the fringes of the forum, could do something. As you know, we know this expression. If you want to kill some kind of a business, then create a working group. I have to confess, there are so many groups. When there's another working group, they say, okay, you have to become the chairman of that working group. And I say to this, yes, so I'll think about it. Yes. On the fringes, in the fields of the economic forum, yes, we could do that, but only during the summer, because during the winter it's very, very cold in the fields around St. Petersburg. You are very well known in the country, not just an economist, but also a political scientist. And in certain fields of thought, you are very energetic and aggressive, but I'm very interested in listening to you, and I have to confess that sometimes I read what you write and what you say. So we do not refuse anything. We are open to any discussion that will lead to the benefits of the Russian Federation. Of course, I will agree with my president, but with one clarification. What is the model that we are building? Ideal model for Russia is authoritarian social capitalism, because it looks like we are going in the right direction, and then also maybe in the liberal direction. Of course, we will have to do something, and we're very proud of what we've been doing. But of course, we started doing only when the cockerel started to bite. We will send the cockerel to be boiled in a soup. As for the model, I spoke with the heads of world information agencies. We have to look at what's going on in the world. So, for example, Chinese model of economy is recognized by many experts as more effective than the ones that existed before, including Northern American and European and so on. So this is what you, I think, said just now, where there is a combination of elements of planned economy and market economy. The Chinese have managed to do this within their conditions, and I agree with this assessment. And if you just look at the figures of their economic growth, and that's obvious. However, that's for the Chinese society, for Chinese economy, that's effective. You know what I would agree with when you characterized my colleague's speech? You said that economics is a science, but also to a certain degree it's an art. I think that's the right thing. These models, these rigid models, when they are placed, when there's a common measure for different countries that work in different conditions, that are at different stages of its development, some of the structures work well, some of the structures don't work well. We have to be based in realities of our country, and what's important is culture, history is important, and what's important is real development. What is effective in our society? Of course, there are some basic things, and we take into account those basic things. 3.6% rate of growth. I think this is great, and 4.5% in the first quarter of this year. This is a significant figure. This is the result of our common work. The business community, government, the central bank, administration of the president. This is our purposeful activity. And as for what is at the basis of our model, I've just explained just now. We are constantly making some decisions to do with correcting our economic model. As any citizen of Russia, I'm happy that over the last 2-3 years, to do in connection with the operation that we are conducting on the front line, we finally got to business. And that's why I'm saying we need to have a quite clear understanding of where we're going. Maybe let's listen to President. Let's listen to your experience. The government Your government has been working in very difficult, or country has been working in very difficult conditions. You've been under sanctions for many years. However, you survived and you continued to develop. How did you manage to do that? The whole country has been using that potential, but now we see that development is moving to the more to the east and to the north. We were saying that Russia would be increasing at the expense of Siberia, but now we can say that Russia will be increasing also at the expense of Arctics. So we're developing those areas. They're quite expensive in terms of development, but it will be worth in the long term. I talked about the eastern development of the eastern railways. When Trans-Siberian railways were constructed, they began before the Russia-Japan War. And in the latest history, our history, we've also had this as one of the priorities. We thought that these railways would not be, rail tracks would not be as busy, and they were not focusing on it. However, the development did go ahead, maybe not at the speed that we are doing it now. But in the modern conditions, we cannot do this the way we did this in the Soviet times and even under Stolypin. The main means of production used to be land, and land was given away at the time. But now the main means of development is brains, and we have to develop brains in our student campuses and at universities. This is what I talked about when I talked about 40 campuses for universities, developing science, necessity to implement robotics and artificial intelligence. And in a significant part, this will be developed in Siberia, and this is where it will be done. So we will be moving our large companies there as well. Unfortunately, all of this cannot be done through administrative means. I mentioned one company that is Rushydro, is one of the largest hydro energy companies in the world. And when I appointed the head of that company, I said, provided that you move to Krasnoyarsk, to the headquarters. Will the family come with you? He said, yes, they will. So in order to build a building, you need to have experts. But to hire experts is not a simple thing. You know, some people want to move, some people can't move, won't move. Some people are too valuable to be lost. And so this has to be an organic process. But nevertheless, this is an objective, and I agree with you. The center of world development is there, and you have to be closer to that center. You know, Peter the Great breached a window to Europe. Why? Because there was the center of development, and now we can see that the center is moving, and you have to be closer to the centers of development. You are correct in this. I've got a question. Pyotr Alexeyevich, Peter the Great, has created a window to Europe. Why don't we create a third capital? And so we would be standing on 3 feet near one of the largest towns, and would have new, young, energetic people, truly energetic people will be moving there, and we will renew the elite, put fresh blood into it, and maybe you could issue a decree. I know many companies with their high salaries will move there if you decide this. Do you want to repeat the act of Peter the Great? Peter the Great is a historic figure, and he was the Tsar of all Russia and emperor, and these were different conditions. This was a different condition of society. These were different goals. In the modern world, you have to apply such means that will work effectively today. And as much as we, in our mentality, as much as we are close to administrative ways of making decisions or implementing decisions, we and just through a decree sort of order the society to do something. I think we have to motivate people to move forward. And if we create conditions for development, then the centers of economic activity will automatically move there. For example, we talked about Far East many years ago. I went to a shipbuilding factory there to Vladivostok, and it was half demolished. And I said, here we are going to reinstate it. Not just going to reinstate it, but we're going to create new competencies here and build new ships. And you should have seen the faces of people who surrounded me, all these workers, and they were very, very skeptical. And I can tell you that through great efforts, we're creating that cluster that is being built there. So all this money that was stolen there, two or three times we approached this project, and the current governor created a large tonnage shipbuilding company there, and that required a lot of effort. But what I'm leading to is that people moved there because there were high salaries. People started moving there. Salary has increased. This industrial culture has developed. Now there's cooperation with other countries. Now so VTB and Mr. Kostin, who is here, they are dealing with that development of that shipbuilding industry. And it looks like it's like he's never been a finance person and has always been a shipbuilding person. I just wanted to say that creating this this shipbuilding company on the ocean, this was done through a natural organic through market means. So this is in response to your point on making that decision. Of course, this is a difficult work, but this will be sustainable. When I talked about Stolypin, yes, this was all done under orders and all of these decrees. But then at the time, this was the main means of production, and that made sense to distribute the main means of production, which was land at the time, and that made sense. But I think what I propose would be more sustainable. But of course, overall, you're correct. Of course, we need to move in that direction. I'm not a greater imperialist than you are, I don't think. But I know something, that the countries that created new capitals, those capital, they created a really strong and fast advance in the economy. I think we need to remember this, and I maybe we should not forget about the third capital. Okay, thank you. Now if we move to a wider subject, now we see that the old ecological system is being destroyed, and there are many reasons for this. And one of the reasons was that Soviet Union was the basis for the economic position was the defense sector or military sector. And so the structure collapsed because the structure crumbled because the military industrial complex was destroyed. So we don't have the master plan of what needs to be done. And we've got the Chinese friends who are doing something. What about you? Did you think that Russia could possibly take upon an initiative to create a master plan for a new economic system for the world, gathering brains from new countries? Maybe after some time brains from the older countries will flow. Maybe we could create a center which will be building a new economic system. So there will not be if Chinese start doing this, the world will be afraid of them, or if Indians start doing this. But us, they will not be afraid of. I think our African friends will join with pleasure. We'll be able to use their experience, and maybe we could take upon this task. This is not an imperialist idea. So Bretton Woods system died a long time ago, in 1976, and then Jamaican system came in, and it was Bretton Woods system was built on a gold equivalent. In 1976, the United States took the decision to move away from the gold standard, and the basis became the Jamaican system, which detached the world from gold. What is the basis of this Jamaican system, which works to this day? It's the trust in the American economy. There's no other security, so to say, other than trust in the American economy is there. So there's no other security. What that means is that they are exploiting their position in the world economy, and they are earning serious money on this. There's open source information that notionally the United States owes the world economy $54.3 trillion. What does this figure consist of? $12.6 trillion is what individuals hold on their accounts, in their pockets, so to say, outside of the borders of the United States. plus another 10 trillion is invested or taken out by American companies. So this is 22.6 trillion US dollars, which is not secured by anything other than trust in the American economy. And the rest of the amount is what citizens of other countries invested in the American companies. But their reliability ultimately also depends on the economic system of the US. So what's happening in the world? The volumes of American economy shrink, and their fundamental basis or foundations are cracking, seeing some cracks. Not just debt, but also the fact that they're not managing their target figures for inflation. So they went beyond 7.8% of inflation in the COVID times, which undermines the trust in the American economy. And this is a problem. This is an obvious problem for all holders of the US dollars. And due to the fact that it's shrinking, because its share in the world economy is shrinking, it's an absolutely natural move towards formation of multipolarity in the economy and in finance. Of course, we can make up some systems. However, the significance of a certain currency depends on the significance of the economy that it represents. What are we doing now with our BRICS partners? We are building this joint work, and the role of Russia will be significant. We've created a new bank. We've created new currency tools, instruments. The whole world, but not maybe the whole world, but significant players are moving to national currencies. China, 90% of our trade volume is done in yuan and in rubles. On the post-Soviet area, we see that the trade volume nears 70% in rubles. We have to do this together so it's more sustainable. So we discussed this with some of my colleagues until very late. We talked about this session today and the possible topics, and we came to the conclusion that American government, just like what was happening in the UK when they were, employees were breaking the tools that they were using for work. So this is what they're doing. They're breaking their instruments or their tools which they're using for work. So they're pushing the participants of the world economy from the dollar. They're pushing them away from the dollar. Through their actions, they are speeding up that process. Of course, there will be new instruments that will appear. So we talked about, central banks in BRICS, and our colleague from Zimbabwe talked about attracting investments. And this can be done not just in Zimbabwe, but maybe done in other countries of Africa and South Asia and also Asia and fast developing countries. We need to create such instruments which will guarantee the investment and return. What else can it be based on if not on gold? It can be based on the quality of the investment projects. If we ensure quality and we can do this together, and stability of the political regimes, then you can create such a system of settlement which will not be volatile. And all of this can be done, would not be subject to inflation. We discussed this. We discussed this with Xi during his visit, during my visit to China, and we will be discussing this with other leaders of BRICS. This is very important. This is a very important aspect of our joint work. This is great, but I think we are lagging behind in the basket. There's some internal competition. No, but there are settlements in local currencies. I think if we take some sort of leadership, if we can organize some serious work, we can help everyone. I think we can help our smaller countries, and I'm sure that Zimbabwe and Bolivia will agree that if Russia offers this solution, they will join our work. They'll join our work, and all of us will win from this. I agree that we need to speed up. I agree we need to speed up this process. Then I've got a question. Now we have a very fast growth of military spending and military economy. We're coming back home. Russia has been developing as the military organization of the Russian people, and when we forgot about this, then we crumbled. Now we are strengthening this again, and it's required by the circumstances, but there is a problem that needs to be thought of. So we've got 80% of our GDP goes to defense. This is much less than in Soviet Union. In Soviet Union, we don't know how much was spent because this was not public information. But we spent a lot of money to support socialist countries, their socialist orientation. Of course, it was kind of imposed, and there was a mixture of political and military budget. However, we should win this war sooner or later, and through decisive means, maybe within the next 2 years. Do I have a plan of conversion with companies? I remember the horrible experience of the 90s when we threw away the highly technological millions of very valuable employees with brains. Maybe now we have to create these plans of conversion when we start to reduce military spending. In the 90s, we not just spent, we destroyed the potential. And I remember this, and I know this very well, because I worked here in St. Petersburg, and 70% of the economy of the city was represented by the defense sector. We've demolished or destroyed all of it, or almost all of it. And at the beginning of the 2000s, we started to work on re-establishing all of that, and we managed to do this with a great element of highly technological element. And of course, we need to think about conversion. Not just the conversion. We need to think about the fact that these facilities have to developed in a modern way. What do I mean? Throughout the whole world, those companies that produce military products and military equipment, they also produce civilian equipment and products. And that's they're very successful in terms of attracting these new technologies. And generally, we have a plan. And this plan is being followed through. Last year, the level of defense sector manufacturing was in the region of 25%, 25.1%, I think, in 2022. Last year, this was in the region of 30%, almost 29%. So we've got that process. And of course, we have to think about the fact that our military spending has to correspond with the demands of today and with the level of development of our economy. We should not be doing what they're doing in the United States, because their trade deficit, the current account deficit, is $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year. What does that mean? I think it'll be clear what I'm talking about here. This is exactly the neo-colonialism in its modern edition. Using the monopoly position of the dollar, United States are consuming $1 trillion goods more a year than they produce. So they are sucking it out of the other countries. So we talked about this pandemic years. I can't remember how much they printed. I think they printed in the region of $5 trillion. And in Europe, they printed about 3.4 trillion euro. So what did they do? They gave this paper away to other countries, and then they started to buy up food on the markets, just like a Hoover, like a vacuum cleaner, sucking it all in. And so they became net importers. And so the food prices have gone up throughout the world straight away. We cannot behave like this. We don't have this monopoly for the national currency like in the US. And we have never behaved like this, like colonialists. In this case, we have to rely on our economy and be realistic. And this is what we're doing. And when we are balancing the situation in our economy, we're thinking about, for the future, of course, we are thinking about diversification. I've got another question to do with economy. I think these questions are very pressing for everyone a lot of people in the audience. So we've got the certain measures. We know that now the mistakes that were done in privatization were very significant, and of course there was a lot of corruption. However, now we see that there's a kind of we're rolling back some of this. But where are the boundaries of this? If we're saying that we're trying to correct the mistakes that were done in the 90s, they were all mistakes because everything was done illegally. In every case, things were done illegally. And I remember I had to deal with all those processes because I had to somehow manage the institute that I was a head of, and science did not pay at the time, and I know what privatization was. We see now that the private capital is currently very, very flexible in filling up certain niches. And we see that private capital is doing a lot of things that could not be done by the state economy. Maybe we should just ban export of capital, and the KPI for the governors should be based on the level of protection of private property. As for resources, they are the property. They are the property of the state. In any case, subsoil. Subsoil is the property of the states, and it's given to companies for use. As for the criminal privatization of the 90s, as painful as it is for me, I don't think we should be using those adjectives. I don't think that this was done purposefully in a criminal way. Yes, in a lot of cases there were lots of mistakes. And there are some economists, some Russian economists, who were saying that everything had to be privatized as quickly as possible, even if only $1 is paid for it. The most important thing they were saying is that assets should move to hands of people who can use those assets, and government or state could not do that, they were saying. But as it turned out, that this was not the right approach for maximum efficiency. And it turned out that the government can be a very efficient owner, especially in the industries which require large investments, because at that time nobody had investment, and that's where all these shady schemes appeared. All this false privatization, in actual fact, it was just the theft of state property. People would just take out loans, and they would buy the state asset, and then they would work and pay out of that asset. They would pay out the loan. Sometimes not even pay out the loan. This is not correct from the economic point of view. The prosecutors only deal with criminal privatization of government property. But, of course, you are right that there should be some restricting lines, some common sense boundaries. And we've been discussing this with the business and with the society. I think that all of this has to be done not at the level of the decrees of the president or the government, but it has to be in the law. And we're discussing this with colleagues, and I think we will come to some sort of decision. Thank you. Now we'll move to political questions. You talk about your desire to conduct negotiations in relation to finishing up the conflict in Ukraine. And of course, that desire is very commendable. But who do we negotiate it with? our Western partners have cheated us, deceived us many times, and they have went back on many agreements that we've achieved with them. The Kiev regime is morally illegitimate, politically illegitimate, and even legally illegitimate. It's a failed state. How can you negotiate at all with them without destroying them first, without defeating them first? And or if you just put a nuclear pistol to the heads of our Western opponents and force them to negotiate. As Stalin said, I don't have any other writers. Well, there was a union of writers of the USSR, and Beria came with reports against them, and Stalin said, well, I don't have any other writers. So these are the partners that we have. We don't have any other partners. We have to try to achieve agreements or conditions which would go along with our interests. And you're right that they are saying one thing and they're doing something else. They're not fulfilling their obligations. But all military conflicts end in peaceful agreements. However, as one of the former heads of European states told me, is that these agreements are made on the basis of either a military win or a military loss. And we, of course, are aiming at a military win. The question of legitimacy of those who we negotiate with, of course, there's a problem. The current power that even a brief analysis of the Constitution of Ukraine says that there's Article 3 of Constitution of Ukraine in 73, Article 73, which says that even executive has lost its legitimacy. They're saying that in the Constitution says that Rada's, Verkhovna Rada authority can be Ukrainian parliament can be extended, the power can be extended, but in terms of president, nothing is said. But as for so it says that during it doesn't say that during the martial law the presidential elections are not held. It says that they are prolonged. So we say that we know that if it doesn't specifically say this, doesn't specifically provide for this, it doesn't allow it. The law does not allow it to do without the presidential elections. I think in accordance with Article 110, 111, I think the authority moves to the Speaker of the Parliament. So if negotiations need to be done, then we can find somebody to negotiate with. And we started negotiations in Minsk and then in Istanbul. And even if we take those agreements that were achieved in Istanbul, we need to they need to be based on the reality of today. All the wars end in negotiations, but also all the wars finish in capitulation of surrender of the enemy. So in these conditions where America benefits from this war, they will continue slaughtering Ukrainians. This war, without moving up that military escalation, cannot end. It cannot be finished without escalating it in a nuclear way. There will be lots of conflicts that will appear objectively. Of course, there is a nuclear fuse which has weakened significantly. There's a fear of nuclear weapons. Do we understand that we have a responsibility not just to win this war, but we also have to be much harder in terms of nuclear escalation? We have to use this nuclear fuse in order to stop the further escalation. Who can do this other than you? You've got great responsibility on you. And if we creep up this ladder, and it's happening anyway, I think then that means we are moving away from that responsibility. You're moving away from that responsibility. In terms of nuclear escalation, we've never started this rhetoric. I can remember that lady. She was the Prime Minister of United Kingdom. When she became Prime Minister, she said that she was prepared to press the nuclear button. We never said this. We never said this. And this is where it all began. We responded to this, that you have to be more serious about this. And we never brandish our nuclear weapons. And application or non-application of nuclear weapons. We've got a nuclear doctrine, and it's all in there. I spoke with these heads of these information agencies. I said that everything is written there. The application of these weapons can be it's in an exceptional case where territorial integrity of the Russian Federation is threatened. I don't think we've got that exceptional case yet. However, we are very carefully monitoring what's happening in the world with us and around us, and we accept the possibility that we would introduce some changes into this military doctrine. As for agreement on this was signed and ratified. Americans never ratified, and we've recalled that ratification. That's on testing the nuclear weapons. And if we need to, we will revoke that ratification. As for the speed and the results, you said that there's a great responsibility on me. Yes, that's true. We can increase the speed of resolving the issues that we have ahead of us. However, that's in direct proportion with the level of losses. And what is being proposed by the Chief General and Ministry of Defense is very important. However, what's more important is taking care of lives and health of our guys that are fighting at the front line. There's military work that is being done since the start of this year. We've liberated 47 villages and towns. 870 square kilometers have been liberated. We are pushing out the enemy from the territory. And the General Staff, Ministry of Defense have got certain plans, and we're confident that they will be implemented, that they will be realized. Nevertheless, we understand that nuclear escalation can save lots of lives because it can bring sense back to our enemies. We've got this nuclear doctrine, and I'm sure that it will be changed. Will be changed in the nearest future, and you will have the right. You will receive the right to respond with a nuclear strike against any type of strike against our country. And this is the right of our head of state, should be the right of head of state. And I think that change in our doctrine will cool down the heads of our enemies. Maybe it's too early to go towards nuclear escalation. However, maybe our enemies have gone crazy. There's especially, like Americans are more careful. They're feeding Ukrainians to these meat grinders, and the Europeans are going to this war the third time they're going against us. So if a pack of dogs or hyenas attacks you and you've got a stick, you can use it to scare them away. But maybe they will tear your trousers and then bite your legs and then will eat you. But if you can shoot a couple of them, then they will run away. President Mnangagwais maybe knows how to deal with hyenas. Do you agree with me that is the way you deal with hyenas? No, we've got our own. We've got our own in Europe. So I'd like to maybe reiterate this question. If we are more decisive in terms of escalation, maybe God showed us the path. Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, and that story is there through that fire rain. They were destroyed. So maybe that part of humanity that lost its belief in God and also lost its mind now. Maybe we could do this without me. They're scared now. Look at this. And of course, maybe we can think about Europeans. Anything is possible. If, God forbid, it goes to certain strikes, we have to understand. We have early notification systems. We've got that. Nowhere else in the world do they have that system, early notification system. So they are defenseless in this sense. That's number one. Second is the power of the strikes. Our tactical nuclear weapons is 3-4 times more powerful than what Americans used against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In terms of numbers, we've got several-fold more. Even if the Americans bring things to Europe, we've got several times more. But if, God forbid, this comes to this, God forbid it comes to this, then you said we will reduce the victims. However, they could also rise to infinity. Also, these Europeans will have to think if those with whom we are exchanging these strikes, if Americans get involved on a strategic level, I doubt very much. I think Europeans should think about it. I doubt that Americans will get involved. But I'm confident that it will never come to this, and we do not have that need for this. Our military are gaining experience, they are gaining competence. Our military-industrial complex is demonstrating its efficiency. I spoke about this many times. I think we've increased the production of ammunition by 20 times. We are manifold greater in terms of our capabilities, in terms of aviation. We are significantly stronger in terms of tanks and so on and so forth. So we don't even have the need to think about this. So I just would like to ask you not to mention this unnecessarily. You are so responsible, and however, we're dealing with somebody who is very irresponsible and who lost their minds. You're a scary person. We are looking at these partners from outside, and I grew up in their system. It just happened for me like that. I know them from the early age. And I understand very well, and I support your hesitation, because this is a very scary choice, and this is a choice that needs to be done in very difficult conditions. However, if they know that you're not going to make that choice, they're going to endlessly continue, and they are fighting not just against us; they are fighting against our friends. Majority in the world, because we are the core of strategic core. If they manage to turn us, then a lot of the other world will turn. I don't know if presidents agree with me. Let me say something. My decisions and the decisions of my colleagues, people I work with in this respect, they're not connected to hesitations. There are no hesitations, and there can never be any hesitations. All our decisions have to be made based on analysis, on real analysis of the current situation, and this is what we're doing. The day before yesterday, you spoke to foreign agencies, and you said something very interesting. You said that we can supply we can supply to the enemies of our enemies. We can supply the weapons, long-range weapons, and I think I was very happy to hear that, because it's high time we did this. Hypersonic weapons, and especially if we supply that together with our technical experts, this will improve the situation in the world. People will just... So what are we going to supply? I understand that we will not be doing this ourselves yet, but as for aircraft carriers, they're not pointless from the point of view of geopolitical influence. As a tool, you can move them further towards the territory where Americans or French or British want to fight or force somebody. They make sense. However, provided taking into account hypersonic weapons that China and Russia have, they of course lose the lose sense, and they should not be spending their money. Why did you say they should not be spending the money? They should be spending. Don't say this out loud. Let them continue spending the money. So, as a strategic weapon, aircraft carriers have lost their meaning. But as a non-strategic weapon, they still make sense. Let them spend the money on it. As for supply of weapons, we are not supplying weapons yet, but we reserve the right to do this, and to states and legal structures that experience certain pressure, including military pressure from countries that supply weapons to Ukraine and call for use of that weapons against our Russian territory. If they supply weapons to the military action area and call for its use, why can't we do the same thing? Why can't we mirror what they're doing there? But to say that we're going to do this tomorrow, I'm not prepared to say that, because in any case, this such supply is connected with a number of things, number of circumstances, which influence certain regions of the world, and we have to think carefully. So we're finishing up with the military, unpleasant military part. In order to attack, if we go according to what I insist on, this fast escalation, I think we need to raise the topic of mobilization, at least partial mobilization. Do you think using mobilization, without mobilization, can we defeat the enemy? Or do we need mobilization? If we follow the recommendations that you voiced to do this at maximum speed. Of course, the current military is not sufficient. However, we've got a different tactics. We're pushing out the enemy out of the territory that we want to have under our control. In this case, we have no need for mobilization, and we're not planning for that. Mobilization that we had 300,000 people drafted, but last year, without any mobilization, volunteers, our men, our people who are patriotic, voluntarily came to drafting units. They signed contracts. There were in excess of 300,000 people. This year, since the start of the year, the drafting points had over 160,000 people come and sign the contracts. So we've got 1,000 people coming almost every day. When we see what the Russian character is, what character of a Russian person is, when we understand this and we rely on this, we don't need any nuclear weapons to finish a conflict. I'd like to add only that we see this forced mobilization in Ukraine. Of course, I'm confident that the age of mobilization will reduce. We know for sure that Americans have put up a condition to lower the age of mobilization to 23, to 20, and then to 18, or maybe just go to 18 straight away. So this is not our business. Of course, then they will replace all the current heads of state in Ukraine. So I think 70,000 they had about 2 months ago, and then 50 last month. So there's a reduction. What they are drafting and what they will continue to draft goes just to replace their losses. There will be some addition. We can count it in different ways. I don't want to go into figures, but we understand the figures. And in the current situation, where we've got volunteers coming in and go to fight for their motherland, we don't need to talk about mobilization. Naturally, I understand your point, but I understand the history of our country very well. And I remember 2016 when 1916, and people were tired. And in 17, we took out the victory out of the hands of loss. Now, when we've got this surge of the spirit of Russian people and economy is strong, we can work. So we've got this fifth column that ran away. Our Western partners are liquidating their own, people who are on their side among our ranks. So these are the arguments that we send you on a regular basis, where we thank you for your recommendations. We're not dismissing anything. We're taking everything into account. So there's a point that you've already touched upon. So we grew up in this communist ideology, and we don't want that. However, a great state without a great idea, without a great ideology, cannot exist. Those countries that lost the national idea, they perished, and there's lots of shadows or graves of such states. By the way, we did this too when we lost our belief in Tsar and our motherland, and then the second time we lost it when we lost faith in communism. Now we talk about this ideology. State ideology can be formulated very well, and you've partly formulated it in your speeches. Maybe this ideology should not be compulsory, but it should be compulsory at least for those people who want to become leaders of the country, who want to be the elite of the country. So it's like a code of honor, and it can be formulated easily. And it's very close to the Confucian ideal of decent man, and also can be based on some Orthodox principles, Muslim principles. So if people want to just lead ordinary life, that's fine. But if you want to lead, if you want to achieve success in society, then you have to stick to very clear rules, and these rules should be formulated. So this can be done quite easily, but I don't want to maybe do this in this audience right now. Why are we afraid of this? Why are we afraid to introduce a single ideology for the state, for those who want to serve the state and the society? We're not afraid of anything. We're afraid of it. There's constitution that you mentioned, and it says that that should not be any dominant ideology. We did have an ideology during Soviet times. However, the presence of that ideology did not prevent the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the idea, unifying idea, should be there, of course. You said that, first of all, we lost our faith in Tsar and motherland, and then we lost faith in communism. Yeah, we did lose faith in Tsar, but we did not lose faith in motherland. Secondly, there were different ideas about what is good and what is bad for motherland, and that's a different question. The faith in communism was lost. No, not by everyone. Otherwise, we would not have had a communist party right now, and we respect that very much. The idea is that we have to have unifying ideas, and today's events demonstrate this, that it's patriotism in a very good sense of the word. People who come to the front line without trying to preserve their life or health, this is the demonstration of patriotism. So this is something that we have to present in a nice way, and we have to explain this in a beautiful way. Please help us with that. Yes, we will do that. I remember this communist ideology, and we lost that communist ideology. I did not miss it very much. However, because of the death of that ideology, we lost the country, because there was a vacuum, and that vacuum had to be filled. So this vacuum has to be filled. If you offer us something, then we will do it. But then you will have to propose this to the society, to the elite, and make that compulsory. And then it will work. And our communist ideology was compulsory for everyone. And for many years. And for many years it moved our country ahead. And that allowed us to win this horrible war. You know, it would be a pleasure to discuss this with you, but I don't want to move this into this grave field. But if this was the only thing that unified the multi-ethnic country, then that would be one thing. However, why did they legalize the church again? And it's the same way today. They're saying that there are no people, non-believers in the trenches. There are no non-believers in the trenches. And it was exactly the same at that time. And because of that belief, they came and they moved forward. And so motherland was number one always. And please, let's not forget this. Of course. However, many countries did collapse when they lost their national ideology. Okay, maybe let's talk about another peaceful question. We've got great discussion in the country about immigration. And there are some chauvinistic moods which are lethal for a multi-ethnic society like ours. With this, police department is the one that's dealing with immigration. Whether they're doing it well or not is another matter, but their objective is to limit the immigration. I think that there should be a much harder approach in terms of limiting negative influences. And maybe we could start the process of attracting highly qualified migrants. So there will be a crisis migration, and it's happening now. We missed a wave of very interesting people who could have come from Afghanistan when they were fleeing, when Americans did what they did there recently. Maybe we should modernize our policy of migration policy. It's too liberal at the moment. And at the moment, it's the police department that's dealing with immigration. Maybe the government should create a body that will regulate us. Maybe we could develop modern concept of or modern migration policy and deal with it. I've got nothing against this. You're right. In terms of interesting people from Afghanistan, we need to think about this. We've got lots of interesting people from other countries. But you are right now that this we do not have that conscious migration policy. We had a body which was then absorbed by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and so we've got this question. So we're discussing this with colleagues, and I put this in front of the government and the Security Council to come back to this question as soon as possible. We can't say that this problem is not there. It's there. We have to have labor migration with this zero unemployment. Lack of labor becomes a limiting factor, but also it's important that we need not just migrants, but we need people with certain background, certain qualification. My colleagues understand this. My colleagues from the countries where we've got majority of immigration from understand this, and we together should agree with them how we prepare them in terms of knowledge of our laws, our language, and so on, so that these people who come also feel comfortable, so that locals do not have any problem with that in their daily life. Because migrants, where do they accumulate? They accumulate in areas where there's economic growth, in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, in some Siberian cities. Of course, we have to do a lot in that field. With I would like to use the experience of our distinguished guest. I'd like to ask President of Bolivia. I will ask my colleagues to distribute your speech as a study material for everyone in my university, because this is it's a live example of what we teach at our universities. This is a live example, real life example of an alternative. But I've got a different question. You are relatively rich country, and you need to maybe attract investments, and you've got plans for transcontinental channel. So will you need to go to the World Bank or IMF, or is the time gone for this? Do you need new instruments? What sort of instruments do you see? So we're creating BRICS Bank, for example. What would be ideal from your point of view, from an effective acting economist? What would be the ideal system which will give you the opportunity to develop in an independent way? As for the possible loss of certain elements of the European culture and genes of the European culture in Russia, because we're turning towards the East and towards Asia. First of all, we're not turning because of some change in the mood today. This turn is happening in the world globally due to growth of new centers of economic development. And we started this work long before the tragic events that are happening in Ukraine. I said this right at the beginning, that the economy is shrinking and the influence of the previous centers of influence is shrinking, is reducing. So we see that the BRICS GDP is greater than the total GDP of the Big Seven. And these trends not just continue, these trends also speed up and they increase. This is an inevitable flow of events. You can't do anything with it. This is a trend. This is a trend that will continue. And of course, as we just discussed with you, Peter's created a window to Europe because it was the center of economic development and culture and so on. And then he was presenting the boots that were made in Holland and so on. But and we have to take into account these elements. And as for the genes of European culture, it's not us who are losing these genes. It's the parts of the Western Europe that are losing these genes of European culture themselves. What will remain is just architecture. This culture is being poisoned by globalists who put as their priority not local interest of their people. They put as the basis their ideas that are removed from reality. So in this sense, we are becoming the center of traditional European culture and the center of traditional European values. If you look back into the centuries, even for non-believers, these values are based overall on Christian culture. For us, for Russia, for a country with many confessions, I can't remember who said this, but that the state is the military machine for the Russian people. I disagree with this, because we are a multi-confession state. If you think about Catherine and other heads of states, tsars and emperors, they always treated local populations with respect. They always treated local traditions with respect. This is how Russia was formed. And part of the Russian culture is European culture. And we became the bearers of this culture. And in their own countries, they're killing their own culture. And of course, we see that now certain Europeans do understand the value of it, and they do try to come back to their traditional values, but whether they manage to do this or not, we'll have to see. From our side, what we need to do is we need to develop our country on the basis of the historic roots on which it was formed as a multi-ethnic, multi-confessional state. And you said about St. Petersburg. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. We are developing culture here. We are cooperating with our friends and partners from Europe, from Asia, from Latin America, from Africa. You talked about St. Petersburg. I look at the picture on the left, on the right, in the middle of this picture. Isakiev Cathedral, Synod. This is a view from the university where I studied. So we've got Menshikov Palace, and then we've got Vasilievsky Island, Isakiev. So this is a view from Hermitage. If you look back from this side to the 12th Collegium, it would be as beautiful. Why is that? Why? Because all of this is done on the basis of a very important principle of harmony. We will be building our policy on that basis, harmony. Russia will definitely be part of that multipolar, harmonious world. And it's natural for us that we will rely on our European roots, European culture, but we will treat the traditions and cultures of other ethnicities of the Russian Federation with as much respect. Thank you. I would like to thank our guests and our chairman. Thank you.